Hey guys, Zack here, and this is my review of Danny Phantom. Okay, so this episode, Bitter Reunions, is essentially the first episode that steps away from the more episodic storytelling that we've been covering up until this point. By just being like, hey, there's the occasional continuity thing like here. This episode just sets up the main antagonist of the series and also sets up his connection to previous villains. But in case, the episode opens up with Danny being on his scooter, and he is, for once, going to be on time for his curfew. And he's obviously happy about that because because the episode establishes that, you know, because of Danny's ghost hunting, job, he's been late a lot lately. So unfortunately, he's been unable to get home. But this time, there's no ghost or anything that could possibly go wrong, and he's happy about that. And of course, there's a ghost that needs to be caught, and of course he realizes that's gone horribly wrong. But in any case, he then proceeds to see three vulture ghosts who are, well, shall we say, a bit lost. They're just poking in and out of houses, and that's about all they're doing. And Danny, of course, immediately switches to his ghost mode and tries to figure out what exactly it is that's going on. And they're obviously in the process of, like, the vulture ghosts are arguing amongst themselves, pointing out that they're clearly lost and that they don't know where they're supposed to be going. And Danny, of course, follows them a little bit, trying to figure out what exactly it is they're talking about. And eventually, the vulture ghosts do get the bright idea to actually ask Danny for directions. And what they find out is that they're actually looking for Jack. It's revealed that they're looking for Danny's father. And when Danny figures it out, they realize that they are in the right place. And they decide to fight him to actually figure out where the information is. But Danny, realizing that they're going to hurt his dad, proceeds to fight back against them, and proceeds to kind of swing them around. Uses his ecto blast and all the other things that he's learned up until this point to fight back against them. And he eventually winds up at the Amity Park clock tower where he proceeds to ambush them and proceeds to grab them by their tails and sends them flying. But then realizes that he's late for his curfew because, you know, he was at the clock tower. He knows what time it is, and he immediately comes home to discover that Jack and Maddie are disappointed at him for being yet again being late. And of course Jack is working on a new invention that is designed to shoot ectoplasm, as we find out. But in case he's working on this big machine in the middle of the living room, and as he's doing that, him and Maddie start lecturing him about how obviously he's how he's been late a lot so far, and does point out that they don't really like tolerating it, pointing out that curfew is curfew and that he should be there by 10 o'clock. And of course, Danny objects, pointing out that they have no idea that he has no idea what he's going through. And Maddie points out that they were his age once, so they do find that a little bit preposterous. But he also admits that they have no idea as his ghost powers start acting up. And it's this point where Jazz steps in and tells them that the reason they think that Danny thinks that he can't relate to them is because they never really spend any sort of time with him and try to get to know him. And they of course point out that they're always busy working on some new invention. They're always busy trying to quote unquote catch ghosts. And they point out that because of that, they point out that there's not really much structure in Danny's life because he's not really, you know, bonding with his parents in any sort of meaningful way, and outside of the ghost hunting thing. And Jack and Maddie hearing this does point out that there might be a perfect opportunity to actually bond as a family. And of course, what we find out is that Jack is actually having his college reunion, which was 20 years ago. And what we find out that He said he's excited to go because he's, as he puts it, his friend Vlad is currently throwing it at his big castle in Wisconsin, and suggest that should be something that they can all do as a family. And Jazz openly objects, pointing out that she doesn't really want to go and thinks that she's being punished for some reason, which, you know, is, well, we find out is not too far from the truth, but it's because, you know, she doesn't want to go. She doesn't want to leave. She doesn't want to go to the reunion. But Jack is insistent that they go, pointing out that it'll be a good bonding time for the family. So, with that, he then proceeds to, after fiddling with his invention a little more, which scoops Jazz in the face with ectoplasm, much to her chagrin. They then proceed to get all pile into the Fenton RV, which is essentially, well, to say it's an RV is kind of generous. It's essentially this mobile fortress type thing that is designed to, you know, be a ghost's worst nightmare, as Jack explains, pointing out that every single button activates a weapon that is designed to be dangerous towards ghosts. And this, of course, Danny admits that he's a little bit stuffy and decides to open the window. But Jazz tells him not to push any buttons, and too late, Danny accidentally activates several weapons which blast several things, including Jazz in the face again with ectoplasm, and she is annoyed. But of course, because pointing and says that she'll get Danny back for that. But in case they continue onward, they eventually stop at a roadside truck stop, and for them to sleep for the night because they can't go all the way, because they can't just drive all the way through. And Jack tells them to get tonight to get some good sleep because they'll be at Masters' mansion early tomorrow morning when they get up. At which causes Jazz to roll over and do a double take. And wonders if she heard Jack correctly and if the name is actually Vlad Masters. And of course, what we find out is that yes, as we find out, Jack and Vlad used to be best friends in college alongside Maddie, and they used to do everything together, and were also studiers of the paranormal, and it's kind of where Jack got his start as a ghost hunter. But as we find out, it did not end well between them. As we find out about 20 years prior to the series, we find out that Jack was working on a prototype ghost portal, which Vlad was insistent would not work. And Maddie also notes that the readings don't look quite right. But Jack just kind of plows ahead and continues onward with the experiment. And in the process, the ghost portal does wind up working, but it also blasts Vlad straight in the face, giving him a case of what the show refers to as ectoacne. And essentially what Jack explains is that the ectoacne effectively ruined Vlad's social life, as he was forced to be in the hospital waiting for the ectoacne to clear up, and for him to eventually be able to return to a normal life. And admits that he and Vlad haven't really spoken since, but Jack is hoping to finally bury the hatchet and reconnect with his old friend, which of course does wind up setting up a little bit for the episode. But in case with that, Jack then goes to sleep, telling everybody to get some shut eye, and Danny is just a little bit interested to know more about what happened between the two of them. And in any case, they then proceed to arrive at Master's mansion, which of course is a giant castle. And what we find out is that they park at the castle, and Vlad is immediately there to greet them, and we do officially meet Vlad. We meet him as a teenager, but we officially meet him here. And Vlad, of course, is happy to see everybody in the family, but also is a little bit cold to Jack, which is expected. Essentially, he escorts the rest of the family in, and then slams the door in Jack's face, much to Jack's chagrin as he tries to open the door and can't succeed. And what we immediately find out is that there's a big green and gold color scheme in Vlad's foyer, which of course and what we quickly find out is that Vlad starts flirting with Maddie a little bit. He does admit that, but well, Jazz also asks if Vlad knows any good interior designers, pointing out that obviously green and gold. They're a little confused about how green and gold might be an actual color scheme, but Vlad, but Danny then proceeds to point out that the obvious thing, and that it's a gold and green color, and they invert the colors specifically for the show so they don't get copyrighted, but they do establish that Vlad is a what is it? That they establish that Vlad is a Green Bay Packers fan and is obviously very very much loves the Green Bay Packers. But of course Vlad points out that they are indeed his favorite team and he loves watching their games. But it's at this point where Jazz asks Vlad why he hasn't just outright purchased the Green Bay Packers, because he's rich and wealthy, and what we find out is that Vlad is essentially angry. Points out very angrily that the Green Bay Packers are owned by the city of Green Bay, and they won't sell them to him because it's one of the few things that his wealth isn't able to buy him. And of course he also then proceeds to flirt with Maddie some more, pointing out that's one of two things that's only one of two things that money can't buy him. And she proceeds to nervously leave to go and let Jack in, who is currently banging on the doors of the castle. So they leave. But in case once Jack is kind of inside the building finally, Danny does note that Vlad is flirting a lot with their mom, and Jazz points out that as long as Vlad has working plumbing, and Mom says no, it'll probably be fine. So she's just happy to be indoors. But in case, Danny does try to strike up a common interest with Vlad, noting the numerous memorabilia that are around the walls. And but of course they note that all of the cool things, and Vlad is happy that Danny is taking an interest in his favorite team, and decides to show him his most prized possession, an autographed football, which he demonstrates he got before the player who signed it retired. I forget who, but he is his most prized possession. He's very happy about it, but it's at this point where Jack proceeds to tackles him to the ground, pointing out that he's still got the old moves from when they were in college. And Vlad then angrily yells at Jack, telling him to get off of him, and tells him that he never really had any old moves, pointing out that he was hospitalized and his social life was pretty much ruined after that. But also points out that it was the catalyst for his wealth. We find out that after being hospitalized, he started making some very shrewd decisions to become the millionaire we know now. And Vlad, of course, admits that he's happy about the fact that everybody's there, and does tell them that they should really spend the night, since he points out that they're there and the reunion isn't until tomorrow, so they're very well welcome to just stay there. And Jack is initially skeptical, and doesn't want to stay. And although Jazz just coughs a let stay, which Danny picks up on and notes is very smooth and subtle, which it isn't. But while Jack is hesitant to stay, Vlad does point out that he did purchase his castle from the late Dairy King, and does point out that the castle itself, that the ghost might still be haunting the castle, which of course encourages Jack to stay, and he proceeds to go outside to go get all of his ghost hunting equipment before going up to his room. And with that, everybody then proceeds to turn in for the night. But in the middle of the night, Jack suddenly has to go to the bathroom and gets up to look for the bathroom. And unaware to anybody else, the vulture ghosts reappear and start following him through the castle. And Danny eventually is woken up by his ghost sense when he senses the vulture ghosts, and he goes outside to discover that they're back. So in order to kind of defend his father, he uses his ghost powers to turn him intangible and deposits him safely in the bathroom, so that Jack is able to go in peace while he deals with the vulture ghosts. And he is able to fend off the vulture ghosts, and is able to kind of chase them off. But it's at this point, but after that, the ghosts start to panic and freak out, and they immediately leave. And Danny is a little confused as to what happened, noting that he isn't that scary. But then he turns around and discovers another ghost who points out that he does know who Danny is. He openly acknowledges that he was expecting that the vulture ghost would bring him Jack, and refers to him as an old fool, but also a surprise that he saw the half ghost instead. And of course, and it's at this point where he then proceeds to kind of fight Danny, and they proceed to retreat into the library of the castle, where the ghost, whose name is unknown, but the ghost continues to fight with Danny, pointing out that he was surprised to see the half ghost there, but of course Danny then proceeds to continue to fight, and what we find out is that it's a very one-sided fight, because what we find out is that this mysterious ghost, who, for the time being, will go unnamed because that's the twist of the episode, proceeds to easily deflect all of Danny's basic attacks, pointing out that the ghost rays are very year one, and that Danny has likely only just learned them. But also then proceeds to demonstrate his abilities further by duplicating himself with his ghost powers, which and of course, Danny is wondering how he's able to do something like that, and it's at this point where the ghost points out that he's had years of practice, something that Danny isn't going to have. At which point he proceeds to blast him with several ghost rays himself, and also summons a ghost shield when Danny tries to blast him back. And eventually, Danny winds up getting knocked unconscious and is knocked out of the library, and then reverts back to his human form. And it's at this point where the ghost is surprised because he sees that the ghost is actually Jack's son. At which point he turns back and reveals that the ghost is actually Vlad. It's revealed that he is also a half ghost, which winds up being the big surprise of the audience. But is also not exactly. So they do foreshadow it, considering the whole ghost portal incident. Because that's exactly what happened to Danny. They foreshadowed that that Vlad might be a half ghost. But in any case, Vlad then proceeds to formulate a plan and brings Danny back to his room. And Danny wakes up in a panic, not really understanding where he is. But it's this point where Vlad comes in and reassures him, pointing out that he heard Danny had a nightmare and just came in to check on him. And Danny does appreciate the fact that he came in to check, and does point out that everything's all right. He just feels like he probably had a nightmare, and Vlad understands and reassures him that he should get some sleep because the reunion's tomorrow. Also Danny picks up on the fact that Vlad is calling him son, and points out that he can just call him Danny. So when Vlad agrees and then leaves to go get some sleep himself, supposedly, but then he proceeds to give a sinister smile to the camera, implying that no, that's not what he's doing. But in any case, at the reunion, we meet we don't meet a lot of them, but we meet at least one of Jack and Maddie's old classmates, and they keep looking, and of course Jack is very just happy to see everybody, but then he calls to a woman who he refers to as Harry. And her name is Harriet Shin, and he introduces his family to her, and he responds that she is a very famous reporter, and that he's very happy for the career that she's developed, but also responds that before that she just knew her as Harry Chin as a joke, which she points out it stopped being funny the millionth time he said it. So she's just a little annoyed at Jack. But at which point Maddie apologizes on her husband's behalf. But and Harriet does respond that it's okay, but she also should have known what she was getting into. But they're a lot more friendly than she is with Jack. So so it's obvious that she doesn't hold Jack's behavior against Maddie. She's just, Maddie married him, so she should be used to it by now. But But in case at this point where Jack hears that they're playing his and Maddie's song, so he immediately pulls her on the dance floor to dance, and winds up embarrassing himself and his family in front of everybody. And of course, as this Danny then proceeds to remark that he's just a little bit mortified, and Harriet asks him what finally took him so long. But is this point where Vlad comes into the room, and we find out a little bit more about how sinisterly what his plans are, about how he does despise Jack, which is fun. Well, ironic. We'll get to that in a minute. But he does despise Jack, and also believes that he stole Maddie from him. So, and he insists that he's been given a second chance to bring her back into his life, and he's not going to take the opportunity squander the opportunity he's been given. At which point he goes to go and greet Danny, and asks Danny if he's having a good time, and Danny admits that he is, but doesn't really know anybody because they're all his dad's friends. Vlad completely understands that, but also tells Danny that he actually has a present for Jack up in his lab on one of the upper floors, and tells Danny to go get it and bring it back. And Danny proceeds to go and do it. And sure enough, he eventually goes into Vlad's lab, which is exactly what you'd expect it to look like. And he starts looking around, but doesn't see a present. But what he does see is a framed photo of Jack, Maddie, and Vlad with the corner of Jack torn out. And Danny quickly puts two and two together and discovers that Vlad was the one who actually sent the Vulture Ghosts after his father. But as he's doing that, he's attacked by the two octopuses that he fought at the start of the series, and is surprised to see them, because he points out that he's not entirely sure why they're there, and he does eventually go ghost and fend them off. But it's at this point where he starts wondering why the first ghosts he ever fought are suddenly in Vlad's mansion, and he then hears a familiar voice telling him that's not really anything for him to worry about. It's at this point where he sees Skulker in his battle ectosuit, which in his ectoskeleton, which of course Danny is very surprised about, because the last time he and Skulker fought, they destroyed Skulker's ectosuit, and he was returned to his ghosty blob form. But and of course Danny then proceeds to demand why he's in his suit, but Skulker doesn't answer, and instead proceeds to briefly fight Danny, and eventually proceeds to trap Danny in a trap, which Danny can't phase out of, and also then returns him to is able to return him to his human form, which of course Danny is at this point at Skulker's mercy, and Skulker proceeds to walk over to him and reveals a serrated knife weapon that's in the gauntlets of his suit, and of course Danny remarks that it's new, and Skulker is happy that Danny noticed, pointing out that he did get some upgrades. But as he's about to kill Danny, Vlad walks into the lab and instructs Skulker that he told him only to capture Danny and not to kill him, and that's why he let him out, and then proceeds to dismiss Skulker. And Skulker admits that he had to leave anyway, because as we find out, he's still under the effects of the PDA and is unable to get rid of it. Hasn't gotten rid of it yet. It's still stuck to his armor. So he of course then has to go and rent a book on purpleback gorillas anyway from the library, at which point he just leaves to go do that. And it's this point where Vlad then proceeds to introduce himself properly, pointing out that he understands that he was very surprised when Danny arrived at his mansion, and to discover anything, and also notes that Danny probably has a lot of questions, but does point out that he's very surprised to have come in contact with the second ghost half ghost Jack ever created, which catches Danny off guard. And of course, it's at this point where Vlad proceeds to transform into his ghost form in front of Danny, much to his surprise. And it's at this point where Vlad then proceeds to reveal who he was, and about how the accident, about how he started using after the accident. It wasn't so much that he started making shrewd financial decisions to amass his wealth, but rather he started using his ghost powers for his own personal gain to become a millionaire. And he proceeds to tell Danny that the reason he wants Danny specifically is because he wants to teach Danny everything he wasn't able to learn from his own father. Essentially, he's been learning all of his new ghost powers and a whole bunch of other things for 20 years. And that obviously Danny is just getting started out, so he's volunteering for asked Danny to voluntarily renounce his father's name and agree to work with him as his partner and protege. And Danny, of course, refuses, pointing out that he's obviously pointing out that he's one messed up Fruit Loop, but also tells him that he would never actually work with him, pointing out that he loves his father. But of course, at this point, Vlad points out that even then he's in a trap that makes him just as human as his father, and tells him that even if Danny won't join him willingly, he can still get rid of his father and embarrass him in front of everybody. At which point he leaves to go and act his plan while Danny struggles in this cage a little bit. And of course, we do find out what Vlad's plan is, and his plan is to overshadow Jack, and then publicly embarrass / scare everybody at the reunion. And Jack initially does kind of overpower Vlad just enough to warn Maddie about what's going on, about how he's realizing a ghost is overtaking his mind and that he's not going to be strong enough to fight off against it. So he tells Maddie to run before Vlad completely takes over and starts using his ghost powers to terrorize everybody at the party in Jack's body, while also making sure that everybody knows that it was Jack Fenton who attacked them. So. And of course, at this point where Danny is still stuck in the trap, at which point he has an encounter with the Dairy King, who is revealed to actually be a real ghost. But and of course, Danny is initially annoyed and thinks that the Dairy Ghost is there to hurt him and wonders what he's going to do to him. But the ghost of the Dairy King simply pokes the off button on Danny's trap with his staff. And tells Danny that not all ghosts are bad, and some of them just want to be left alone. Of course, Danny then asks the Dairy King if he's going to help Danny fight. But the Dairy King responds that no, he's not going to fight again. He's not going to help to fight because a king never fights, and instead he's going to send Danny to fight on his behalf. And at which point he greets him a farewell goodbye. And with Danny now having his ghost powers back, goes down into the ballroom, where he does discover that Vlad's plan. We're now in Vlad Plasmius, because we find out that that's his name in the previous scene. Although it never comes up, and Vlad never introduces himself as Vlad Plasmius, but it is interesting. But in case Danny realizing what's going on, proceeds to use his own intangibility to shove Vlad out of his father's body. While Maddie and Harriet run out into the parking lot to get to the RV and get to access to all of its weaponry. And Harriet at this point has started seeing ghosts and a whole bunch of other things, and is starting to believe that ghosts are actually real, and that she thought that Maddie and Jack were crazy the entire time. But as it turns out, but Maddie just tells her to shut up and help her drive. At which point she then proceeds to drive the RV into the hallway, and Jazz sees this and points out and states that she's realizing that they're probably not going to be invited back. But in any case, Vlad and Danny do proceed to fight in the other room away from the ballroom for a brief moment. And of course, Danny insists that Vlad's plan isn't ultimately going to work, and he's not going to get rid of his father. By telling him the very obvious fact that he can essentially tell his dad exactly what he knows about how Vlad is a half ghost, and he's using his ghost powers to do bad things and try to make his dad look like a fool and try to kill him. But of course, Vlad points out that Danny could do that, but also points out that if he does anything, that he tries to do anything, he will ultimately wind up exposing himself and then points out that then they'll both go down, and believes Danny will have nothing. But in any case, it's at this point where the RV proceeds to drive to fight with Vlad, and Danny, realizing that his mother will see him in his ghost form, turns intangible to hide from her, while Vlad does briefly try to snatch Maddie out of the driver's seat using his intangibility, and declares that she's coming with him. And Danny, realizing he has no other choice, uses his intangibility to control the RV to fight back against Vlad by using the various weaponry to fight back against him. And of course, Vlad uses his ghost powers to defend himself, but Danny then proceeds to blast him in the face with the ectoplasm, causing him to drop Danny's mother. And Danny inspires Jack to catch him. And of course, Danny now Maddie does compliment Jack for being so brave. And Danny in Jack's body then does point out that he's just very lucky. He caught her, and then proceeds to tell Maddie, or Mom, as he puts it by accident, that he still has one last thing to take care of. At which point he confronts Plasmius in Jack's body. And Vlad immediately plays it off as, "Oh, I'm so scared. I'm not worried." He's like he's not really worried about what Danny's going to do, but he merely grabs Plasmius in Jack's body and tells Plasmius that if so help him, if he doesn't agree to that he better agree to a truce. When Vlad initially refuses, Danny proceeds to remark that if he doesn't, he will walk right out of his father and expose them both. And Vlad, of course, points out that Danny would never actually do that, but Danny points out that he's not worried about revealing himself as a half-ghost, pointing out that regardless of what happens, his family will love him no matter what. Whereas if Vlad is exposed as a half-ghost, his mother is probably never going to speak to him again. So, of course, Vlad, realizing that Danny has, in fact, learned how to use his opponent's weakness against him, is satisfied about the fact that he has, in fact, at least taught Danny at least one thing from his arsenal. At which point, he then proceeds to put on this big theatrical defeat about how Jack defeated him with superior ghost hunting knowledge, and about how he's been bested by the great Jack Fenton, but does ultimately swear revenge before fading into nothing. And of course, Danny then proceeds to emerge from his father, so that his father can receive all of the praise for what just happened. And Danny makes a big show of him coming into the room, claiming he missed the whole thing. But of course, Jack is not very sure of what happened, but is very happy about the praise he's been heaped on about how he's faced off against the ghost and quote unquote won. But it's this point where Harriet then proceeds to reveal that she thought that Jack was crazy all these years about ghosts and all these other things, but does compliment him, revealing that she was wrong, and that she's going to write a whole expose on everything she's encountered while in Vlad's mansion, and that she's going to give them a full story interview. She's going to just do everything in her power to make sure everybody knows the truth. But what we find out is that apparently she gets fired because of this, because writing about ghosts in a magazine that isn't a prestigious newspaper, it's out and not a magazine, obviously gets her fired because everybody thinks she's crazy now. But and of course Jack responds that he hopes that Harriet will talk to him again, because at the moment she blames him for her son's loss of a job, which, and to be fair, it's not really his fault. I'll admit that. But she legitimately wrote an article on ghosts. It was true, nobody believed it, and that's what got her fired. But Jack was tangentially involved because ghost hunter. But in case Danny does reassure his dad, telling him that he understands that even if he was a bit of a dork in college, he does admit that. He does point out that he's proud to have Jack as his father, because in the end it gave him a really cool ghost hunting dad, and he wouldn't trade that for anything. And of course points out that if his classmates can't see that, then they're fools. But and Jack does thank Danny for his compliment, but that also reveals that that's not going to change his curfew in any way, and Danny winds up getting upset that he realized that didn't work. But in any case, that's where the episode ends. But yeah, this episode introduces us to Vlad Masters, who is the main antagonist of the series, which is great. And obviously he's going to be, well, he's one of Danny's most recurring enemies, alongside Skulker. Apparently, as I found out, they're apparently tied for appearances. So apparently, Skulker's the secondary antagonist, Vlad is the primary antagonist, and it's just interesting. But I also should mention the entire plot of Vlad being a villain because Jack quote unquote ruined his life is highly ironic. Like, Jack, yes, ruined his social life, but in the process, Vlad was able to turn his life around by using his ghost powers. And in turn, all of Vlad's immense wealth is all because Jack screwed up like a bumbling idiot. So, yeah, it is an interesting thing. But also, he does wind up being the biggest threat to Danny in his home because, you know, Vlad wants to be with Danny's mother, believes that Jack is undeserving of her, and is doing everything in his power to get them broken up and ruin their marriage, and you know, and do a whole bunch of other things, while also being a formidable opponent for Danny by being both another half ghost for him to fight, but also more powerful than him because he has experience. So overall, it is a fun episode because it does introduce us to what is admittedly a pretty fun villain. I do like Vlad quite a bit, and I do love the whole vampire theme he gives off, because apparently that was intentional. Apparently he was originally supposed to be a vampire, but they changed that so they made him a half ghost instead, but kept the vampire motif. I do like it. I do like his design quite a bit. But yeah, in any case, that is going to do it for today's review. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Also, be sure to follow me on Twitter. Link is down in the description. Be sure to check out my Discord. Link is also down in the description. Please go check that out. Go and check out my Twitch. Again, link is also down in the description. We're going to be playing horror games, so I would appreciate it if you were to go and hang out there. And also, be sure to go and check out my Discord. Again, check out my Discord, because we're going to be doing a horror movie watch-along thing at the end. Of the end of the month for Halloween, for the Halloween weekend. So I hope you guys will go and hang out for that. But also, finally, if you want to see more content from me, then be sure to check out the playlist link on the end screen. And we're going to be, I will probably have it set up to play, Courage Month and Magus Month, two things I worked on previously that I'm also pretty proud of. So I hope you guys will go check those out. But yeah, in any case, that's going to do it. So thank you guys so much for watching. As next time, I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace!